Hi, everybody. Hi. My name's Dave Karger. I'm a correspondent at Access Hollywood and IMDb. I'm very happy to be here tonight. 8 years ago, I was set up on a work date with Kate Beckinsale. Her people wanted me to meet her. We had never met. I wasn't sure what to expect. We had lunch at the Mercer Hotel in New York, and within 5 minutes I could tell she was warm, she was witty, and she was whip smart. I've gotten a chance to run into her over the last 8 years from time to time, but I've actually never interviewed her before. So I'm very excited to be here, and now that you've just seen what I think is one of her best performances ever in Love and Friendship, and I think you agree, I am very happy to introduce Kate Beckinsale. Welcome.
I'd totally forgotten you were forced to meet me.
It was a pleasure. But
me too.
Okay, good. I was doing some reading up on you and was intrigued to learn that you are the daughter of not one but two actors.
Yeah.
What do you think that plays into with the fact that we're sitting here today talking about an acting career?
I think it's, my stepfather also is a director, and then my daughter's dad is an actor, and now my daughter has just announced she's going to be an actress. So we're very boring in our family. It turns out we're boring and we stay within the expected field, apparently.
So one of the questions that we got from the audience, which leads perfectly here, from Dana Jones. Raise your hand, Dana. Hi, Dana, right in the front. Who or what event inspired you to be an actress? Was it one of your family members?
I don't know, it's really weird when your parents are actors, because before you really got out of diapers and negotiated flushing a loo, people are asking you, are you going to be an actor like your parents? And so that is never really, it's not your original idea. I think my daughter's dad is an actor, Michael Sheen, and I think him deciding to be an actor was this kind of very independent, rather radical move that he, you know, landed on his family, and they all went, oh, whereas my family kind of went, oh, you know, oh really, oh dear, you know. I think it comes up as a thing when you're 2 or 3 and people say, are you going to be an actor like your mum and dad? And you go, no, I'm not doing anything like them, you know. And then, I don't know, I really liked doing plays at school, and it's a fairly intoxicating life to be a witness to, I think. You know, it's a creative life. If that appeals to you, it's going to appeal to you.
We're going to do a little bit of a walk down memory lane. I have 12 or 13 of your most notable projects that I want to quiz you about and see what kind of comes to mind. I want to start off...
What if I go into PTSD? I don't know what you're going to ask me.
I know. It's going to be a breeze. I want to start off with Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay, no, we're good on that.
Okay, is that all right?
That was a very good experience, yeah.
You remember that one?
Yeah.
And when you got that part, you were an Oxford student.
Yes.
And I can only imagine what was going through your mind when you're stepping onto the set and it's Kenneth Branagh, Denzel Washington, Emma Thompson, Michael Keaton, Keanu Reeves, Robert Sean Leonard, and introducing Kate Beckinsale.
With her massive eyebrows that somehow have disappeared over the years. Yeah, it was funny actually, because I suppose, what was I, 18 I think. And you know, you've got that very particular, of course amazing shit's going to happen to me when you're 18 feeling, which then really goes away. It's a sharp step off for that. So I did, you know, and there actually were a lot of very familiar British actors in it. There was the actor playing my father, and it was Richard Briers, who had been sort of a family friend for a long time, and Imelda Staunton, who we knew. And so it was a weird mix of like people who were kind of friends of my parents and had been sort of around growing up, and then, you know, Denzel Washington. And the amazing thing about that movie was, one, being cast in it at all, and two, Ken wanted it to feel like a theatre company. And so we were shooting in Tuscany, and there's not kind of great big fancy hotels that can house, you know, that have penthouses for fancy actors being fancy and all that shit that people have. And so the decision was made that everyone would be in villas, and you would have roommates. And so I turned up, and my roommates, this is one of the best things that's ever happened to me, by the way. My roommates were Phila Delore, who's Emma Thompson's mother, who, if you don't know who she is, get on it, because she's fucking amazing. Imelda Staunton, another one-off. Robert Sean Leonard, who was very prone at the time to James Taylor songs at, you know, 7 at night in the, you know, outside, and Keanu Reeves, who was quite bonkers at the time, but also really fascinating. So we all lived in this house together. I was on the bottom floor, and it went, you know, Robert Philida, right, and then Keanu was with the bats at the top, and And so they would be carpooling, and what, you know, I mean, I still don't know how to drive, so I was never in charge of that. But you know, one day Keanu would be driving everyone, the next day it would be Philodon, who would be making the pasta in the evening. And I thought that's what films were like. And I didn't even know what an assistant was, or that anyone would have one. And there wasn't anyone extraneous there. It was just that. So, you know, everyone had plastic chairs to sit on that didn't have their name on. There wasn't a trailer. There wasn't, at lunchtime, all the girls, including Emma and Phil and everybody, we all had one big communal room where we'd all sort of try and have naps. Everybody would suddenly get into their bras and fall asleep. Emma would get up and write fucking Sense and Sensibility. You know. I mean, the rest of us are kind of going, shit, I've got to get a corset on, I've just eaten a huge bowl of pasta. She's busy like fine, writes the most amazing script ever. And it was very much like that. And so it was this incredible kind of community, and it was a play, and so we did the rehearsals like a play, we ran it like a play. I'm sorry to bang on, but so much interesting shit happened on that video.
It's great.
That Michael Keaton couldn't be there for the rehearsal period, so Ken read Michael Keaton's part, and Ken is a brilliant mimic. So Ken did like basically Michael Keaton Batman voice, which was A, super funny, and B, amazingly bang on. And so we had this whole read through, but then Michael Keaton turned up and he wasn't playing it at all like Michael Keaton. He was this like completely bonkers character, totally fully formed, fully conceived character. And what was so wonderful about Ken was just immediately delighted, even though he'd been so sure what he was getting that he'd actually done the impression of it. And it was completely left field, and it was just wonderful to see a director go, yeah, okay, wasn't thinking that, absolutely.
And then the movie finishes, and let's say you're 19, and it goes to Cannes for your first movie. That must have been mind-blowing.
But here's what you probably can't realize is that this was pre-cell phone, pre-internet, in England, we were really a medieval situation in terms of like hair, makeup, publicists. So, like, nobody said anything to me ever about any of those things. They said, oh, you're going to Cannes. Nobody said you can take your mum with you or some other person. So I turn up. I'd bought myself quite an expensive pair of trousers. I mean, literally, so I turned up here. I bought myself an expensive pair of trousers, but didn't really have anything to go with. So in the airport, there's this place called the Sock Shop that sells like socks and things, and also like at the time you were wearing like a body, you know, that has those poppers under here, or whatever. And I thought, all that sort of semi-matches the trousers. I can probably wear that for the premiere. Buy this Sock Shop thing. Anyway, none of my luggage arrived, so I couldn't get ready at all, and I had no makeup or anything. And I didn't even know you could have a makeup artist. I mean, this is how backwards it was. And so finally, at the 11th hour, it arrived. And I'd had very nice offers from Keanu and Robert Sean Leonard saying, you know, you can wear one of my suits, you can do Annie Hall. I'm like, I don't want to be Annie Hall. I've got some very expensive trousers coming. I really want to wear those. And so finally they arrived, and I got ready really, really quickly, but I hadn't realized that I'm quite small, but you can't buy a body in an extra small if you're 5'8". It doesn't mean small, it means small. So I got on the first step, and those popper things went pop, 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 like that. All my whole experience of the first ever experience of my movie in competition in Cannes, I just felt my gusset snap, and had to go, Keanu, 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 can you hold the thing at the back? You know, all my pictures of that.
Oh no.
So when something really great happens to me, something humbling happens within maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And that was a good example.
It's a good balance.
That, yeah.
So soon after that, see, you're going to do just fine with this chat, I can tell. So within a few years after that, you did Cold Comfort Farm. Yes. And I was here recently with Ian McKellen, and we had a blast talking about that one. I mean, it's you guys and Eileen Atkins, directed by John Schlesinger, Stephen Fry.
Apparently, I proposed to him so many times on that movie. He said he'd only accepted, Ian, 2 proposals, me and Lynn Redgrave.
Wow. Nice. So your character, Flora, you were this kind of London socialite who goes to move in with her country relatives. And my understanding is that you fought hard for that part. How did you do it?
I did. Well, I was in the sweet spot of, you know, that it's not really narcissism and egomania when you're a teenager. It's just you haven't knitted a frontal lobe together. So it's not actually who you are. But in that thing of going, no, I must have this. This is for me, you know, like that age. And I'd had 2 or 3 auditions, I think, and got lots of feedback of, you're definitely the favourite, and, you know, they love you. And so I'd sort of mentally decided I was doing it. And I really did feel super connected to this part. And then all of a sudden, they kind of crushingly said, actually, no, we think you're too young. And moved on, and I just was bereft. And I just recently I think I was still at Oxford, or had just finished, and so my response was to go, well, John Schlesinger, incredibly talented and you know, experienced director, you're wrong. I must write a PhD level essay citing all the reasons that you're wrong with actually bits from the book proving it. I literally was still in college. So
this is how a student.
I was. So I wrote this long letter, and then I found out where he lived, like a stalker, and went to his house. And he had a brilliant front door that had a little bit of a space under it. And such luck, and I just like poked it under. And he has the most brilliant sense of humour and was the most wonderful person, and we became friends forever, and he loved that and then cast me immediately from that. You can't do that every time, just saying, because then you're just that person.
And so that was a TV film in the UK, but when it was released in the US as a theatrical release, if you go back and watch the trailer, it says, you know, Eileen Atkins, Stephen Fry, Ian McKellen, and introducing Kate Beckinsale for the second time.
I've been introduced so many times. It's because I had shorter hair. They didn't know it was me.
Oh, okay, there you go. One of my favorite movies that you've ever done, I'm just so obsessed, is The Last Days of Disco.
Oh, thanks.
And we're going to come full circle on that in a bit because it's with Stillman, who also directed the movie you just saw, Love and Friendship. And am I right in guessing that that would have been your first attempt at an American role?
Yeah.
And how'd you feel about that?
I've got a really interesting story. Are you ready? Okay. So here's the thing. I didn't go to drama school, so I always had that slight feeling of like everyone's been told something important that I have been studying Russian and French at Oxford and have missed. And when I started working, I could write one movie a year because in the summer. So I really had that feeling of like, I need to do an apprenticeship. I really need to do as many different kinds of things as possible. And basically my criteria was, if something really scares the shit out of me, I should probably be doing it, right? So I had been workshopping a play with Patrick Marber and Mark Strong and Stephen Delane, and was having the most amazing few weeks where, you know, as an actor, it's such a complete treat to work with kind of a modern playwright and actually have influence on the character that you're, you know, workshopping and all of that, and was having such a brilliant time. And then was offered that play the same day as I was offered Last Days of Disco, and then the play was closer, and it was the, you know, first time it had ever been performed in London. It was going to be at National.
Closer.
Yeah, so I worked on that character pre it actually being a play, and so very much felt like I wanted to do that, but then sat there and went, okay, what scares me more? Being in America scares me more, and being an American scares me more because I've never done it. So that was a really big dilemma because they were both such wonderful jobs, and I picked the scarier one for me.
Well, Magda, where's Magda? Hi. Magda wants to know what it was like auditioning for Last Days of Disco.
Weirdly, I don't remember that much about it. I think and also I found out so much new stuff since doing a press tour with Wit, who is quite a closed book, but after 20 years will tell you almost anything as long as it's at a Q&A in front of loads of people. So I found out loads of weird things. So he says, this is the latest, but this is what I heard last. He said he sort of set up a kind of, he knew he'd written the part for me, but set up a sort of fakey casting situation in London, maybe so that I didn't get really high on myself. I don't know.
Okay.
Which I wouldn't have, because I was in the age of self-loathing and all that at the time.
No longer a teenager, so there you go. That's the next stage.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I don't remember so much about that, but then there was a kind of, you have to come out to New York for a test, and I was just super aware that this was a milieu I had no experience of, and I'd been to America once when I was 9, and I'd been in Disneyland, and I was like, wow, they have really long queues in America, and like really big sandwiches, and that was all I knew really about America. And so it felt like, oh God, now you've got to do this really expert performance. You have to remember, before the internet, we were medievally challenged by so many things. And so, so I came out, and it was like, oh my God, this is not only, you know, a very particular strata of people, it's Wit's actual life, you know, so no pressure, don't fuck that up.
Was there a specific person whose voice or whose accent you listened to or studied?
Not really, but Chris Eigerman and Wit and actually Chloe even, they're very much in the right zone, so I was that kind of creeper following them around, and I don't think I had a voice coach or anything.
Wow, okay.
Oh, we didn't care in those days.
Right. Crazy. The next year you did Broke Down Palace, which I remember vividly seeing that movie and being freaked the F out. Did you
smuggle a lot of heroin?
All the time. No, but just the thought of
that happening.
It happening to someone completely innocent, and that movie just took you there in such an amazing way. And the relationship, yours and Claire Danes' character's relationship, was quite intense.
Yeah.
What was the relationship like with you guys?
It was amazing. I mean, it was. I was a little bit older than her. I think she was 18, and I must have been 22 or so. So that's a lot older at that age. I was almost like a sort of, you know, wet nurse. And anyway, so we went out there, and you know, we'd had a lot of warnings of like, you know, it was quite a sensitive time, and you couldn't really walk around on your own because there was quite a lot of kidnapping going on. So of course, we were all like, well, but the people were so amazing and so lovely, and we were filming in a mental hospital that was actually still sort of semi being used. So it was a quite fairly hair-raising experience, and you know, it was her first movie that she didn't have a chaperone on. So I think it was a really significant one for her, and you know, we were two little pointy-faced girls out in Manila, you know, and it was lovely. I loved working with her. And she's a really good actress. I think we really enjoyed acting with each other. And
Great. The next question is from Jessica Bryden. Raise your hand, Jessica. She's all the way in the back.
Left. She's
shy.
And left.
She's all the way in the back row. And her question is about the next movie I want to talk about, Pearl Harbor. When you researched for Pearl Harbor, did you research the time? What happened?
Nothing.
Oh, did you research the time period? and did you use a coach for that?
A voice coach or a bodybuilding coach?
An acting coach? Do you mean?
Both. I was on a quite severe workout regimen involving one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's old workout partners, which did baffle me at first because I wasn't sure how that fit in with the 1940s nurse thing. Anyway, game on, went in there, got some child soldier abs for free.
Nice.
And then voice coach. I'm not great at having one like hovering about by the camera. I studied Russian and French when I was at Oxford. I've done a lot of, like I studied German, I've studied a lot of languages. So accents for me are something that I'm terrible at singing. I really wish I was good at it. But I think musical ear-wise, I'm okay on accents. And so I usually have like one day where I kind of go through the script with a coach and make little notes, and then I don't like to have somebody really on a set. And I didn't have an acting coach. I didn't know what an acting coach was when I went to Pearl Harbor. Never heard of one. Did
the experience of doing that film feel at all different from anything you'd done before, given that it was such a huge production?
Exactly like a merchant movie.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it did feel really different. It was only the second movie I'd done since having a baby, and it was quite a jolting one to be carting a baby around on. But yeah, 4 units at a time, planes going into trees, and the movie was 6 months long. You know, it was quite a long movie, but it was amazing. I mean, it was, you know, I couldn't quite believe I was there. And I remember, you know, Ben Affleck was incredibly helpful on that because every time you sort of went, I don't understand what's happening, they put me on a funny diet and they've painted me really quite a dark brown, I don't get it, what's going on. He'd go, oh, don't worry, on Armageddon they removed all my teeth. And you go, oh, okay, but that's obviously what happens.
Oh, wow.
You know? So I didn't take that personally. I didn't actually feel it was something to do with being a woman and being, you know, it was just, this is the machine of this. And you know, what was great was that everything had happened to Ben already, and he was pretty supportive and vocal about letting you know. So.
That's good to have someone to walk you through it. I want to talk about Serendipity. I remember so vividly being at the Toronto Film Festival in the middle of September 2001.
Yeah.
I arrived on September 10th, and the 11th happens. We all didn't know what was going on. Does the festival continue? Do we not? Do we go home? We can't get home. And on September 13th, 2001, I went to the premiere of Serendipity.
Awful. It was so awful. And it's really sad because obviously, I mean, John and I weren't comfortable at all about, like, really flying into New York on September the 13th and going down a red carpet seems so not the thing to be doing. And yet, you also want to be going, no, fucking life goes on. But it's a weird feeling when it's you. You know what I mean? So it was just a really weird feeling. And it was especially weird as well because they'd had to erase the Twin Towers from the movie. And I think we were the first movie that they did that on. And it was just a very weird period of time. Also, it was a period of time when nobody was really wanting to go to the movie theatre because everyone was very, very panicked that something was going to happen in a movie, you know, in public places, anywhere. So the movie didn't really do, I think, box office that great. I think because it was just released at a time when nobody was thinking about anything except watching the news and panicking. But it has had this kind of magical life since. And what's funny is I've done all these, you know, what I think are kind of boys' movies, but every time a man comes up to me and says, oh, can I just say my favourite movie? It's every single time Serendipity, every single time. So
that's good.
I think it's quite cheering, actually, isn't it?
I like
these kind of great big beardy bear men come up.
They've got good taste. Yeah. How about Laurel Canyon from 2002? Lisa Cholodenko, who I think is such an amazing filmmaker. For you, that was a reunion of sorts with Christian Bale because the two of you had done a film.
We'd done one of the worst movies of all time.
You notice I skipped that one.
Oh my God.
What was that called?
It was called Prince of Jutland. It was the guy who directed Babette's Feast. directed the original story of Hamlet with Christian, me, Helen Mirren, Gabriel Byrne, Brian Glover, Brian Blessed. I mean, amazing cast. The worst movie I've ever seen. I was actually living in Paris. It was so bad. I was living in Paris at the time, and someone came up to me in the street and said, because it came out only in France, and said, "Oh my God, I loved your movie." And I thought, oh, it's that French thing where they're being mean, you know. And he said, I've never ever seen Hamlet work as a comedy.
Wasn't meant to be a comedy. Okay.
So yeah, so it was nice for us to be on a movie that was, you know, a little bit less risible. But Laurel Canyon was wonderful. Laurel Canyon was one of those ones, I think it was a 5 or 6 week shoot, and it felt like it finished too soon, and I cried at the end. I really didn't want to stop working on that movie.
Does that happen a lot where you cry at the end of a set? No, okay, good. So after that must have been one of the most eventful movies that you've ever made, which is Underworld.
Yeah,
I mean,
that sort of left a mark, more than the others.
I mean, yeah, I mean, so much happened with your life with that one movie. Yeah. You were in it with your boyfriend at the time, Michael Sheen, who you mentioned. You ended up marrying the director, Len Wiseman.
It's like a telenovela.
It is. And you ended up making 5 Underworld. Four Underworld.
They made 5.
That's right, that's right.
I sat one out.
Right, but
everyone still thought it was me, but I
sorry. Was that a daunting idea? Because I've read that you've said you're not a very athletic or coordinated person.
I am now. I mean,
right.
I am
but
now.
At the time.
No, I think I had moved twice in my life before that movie, and had mainly been reading. And so, yeah, I think the thing was as well is that whole kind of apprenticeship idea I'd had of I want to do the thing that scares me the most. Obviously, the person who bunked off PE literally every time then gets offered to do this action movie. And I was also quite dumb on some things. I thought you had to become literally an Olympic level gymnast, and that I thought everyone did every single stuff. I mean, they do make you do quite a lot, but you know, if there's a gymnastic scene, they tend to get someone who does that. Anyway, they sent me that, and I thought it was a mistake at first, and then they suddenly found I was doing it, and it was so terrifying. And actually, it was great because, you know, like I said, I don't have a chip on my shoulder about not having gone to drama school, but it does appear to have come up a couple of times just because it's relevant. But I didn't do that thing where I'm like, oh, you know, I'm a tree monkey and I'm, you know, I didn't do that thing. I was quite intellectually sort of based. So suddenly having to go through this training, physical training, and also learn how to be fighting, and I'm from England and I'm a girl, and make those kind of noises that I felt very inhibited about and embarrassed about. Just as an actor, it was really good for me, not for Underworld only, but to kind of go through this thing that was terribly embarrassing and also not certain of a, you know, not a certain outcome, because I could have just looked like a twat. And I think I had enough good people that were helping that I didn't ultimately. But it did feel like I felt very, very secure and grounded in the work that I had done and the person that I was, and the fact that that was not my sensibility, and you know what a huge stretch it was. And I don't know if that read as much as I thought it would read, just because those trousers are distracting and people tend to think they're you. You know what I mean? After you've done 3 or 4 of them, I think it makes it look a bit like that's like your thing.
If someone had said to you on the first day of the first Underworld movie, you're going to make 4 of these eventually, what would you have said?
No, I would have absolutely roared laughing. No, absolutely not.
Wow.
Every day of that movie, because it was also, for that type of movie, I think it was $20 million budget, and it looked a lot more than that. But what it meant was, you know, I'd have to come into a subway and shoot up a subway, but we only had one go because we couldn't afford. So the pressure for someone who's not naturally good at that stuff and does tend to panic if anything's thrown at them was quite high. So I spent most of it thinking, I'm going to be fired. I'm going to be fired, I'd better marry the director. It wasn't. I just said that to be funny. That wasn't at all the thinking behind it.
Whose idea was it that your daughter, Lily, would play the younger version of your character in Underworld Evolution? Did she say, I want to do it, or did someone, like a producer, come to you and say, here's an idea?
I think it was just one of those things that, you know, she was there and it was so obvious. I mean, she looked so like me. It was, you know, it was a good one. And she was, it was funny though, she was at age, she just started first grade, and they're punchy at that age. You know, they kind of stand up for their rights a bit, and so it was a bit nerve-wracking, especially because, you know, Len was not a kind of disciplinarian type. So we were worried that she'd get on set and he'd say, can you come over here? And she'd just go, no. Quite concerned, but she was great.
I love it. Here's a related question from Jeff Bosley. Where's Jeff? Hi, how are you? You're in the dark, so it's hard for me to see you, but now I see you. Jeff wants to know, this is a great question, with the latest Underworld movie releasing soon, how do you find a way to keep the character fresh for you and for the audience?
All the characters going through some troubles in this movie, and a new wig helps a lot. Keep fresh. Well, that's the thing. You know, that's the sort of problem, isn't it? Because obviously everyone goes, oh, let's do another one. You go, I don't really want to do another one the same because that feels like, I don't know, not really interesting. And then they go off for 2 years and come back with something that you say, no, I don't like it. And then they go off for another 2 years and come back and go, what about this? And you go, oh actually, yeah, there's stuff in there. So, and we had a female director this time, which I thought was kind of cool, Anna Forrester, which, you know, I haven't seen the movie. It could be dreadful, I've no idea. Maybe it's amazing, I've no idea. But it's quite fun to have a female director directing the female lead franchise. That's kind of
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah.
The next movie I want to talk about is one that I've never seen.
Uh-oh, is it Tiptoes?
It's Tiptoes.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, have you all heard of this movie, Tiptoes?
Here's the thing, it's super fun to hear about it. I don't necessarily think you should spend a whole hour and a half.
But watch the trailer.
Watch the trailer.
And if you don't know this movie, it's a movie where Kate and Matthew McConaughey are about to get married, and you go to meet your husband's family and you realize that his twin brother is actually a little person.
Yeah, and his entire family are.
Played by Gary Oldman, and they CGI'd him to be that tall.
Sorry, excuse me, very low budget.
Right.
There was no CGI. There was shoes on the knees, right? Couch with a hole in it and little legs. It was super low budget.
Guys, anyone in this room and anyone watching this right now, just pause YouTube and go and search Tiptoes trailer, because the trailer is outrageous.
It's a wild
because it makes it seem like it's The English Patient, right?
Yeah.
It's like Gary Oldman in the role of a lifetime. You know, so the voiceover is a little much.
He's not kidding. You must actually.
It's really, really great. But okay, so I need to know more about the experience of making this.
Someone calls up and goes, Kate, Matthew McConaughey, Gary Oldman's playing a little person, and everyone else in the movie is a little person, and the director directed Freeway. You go, okay. I want to have that experience, whatever the movie is. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have gone through that whole experience. It was odd though, because my daughter was 2.5, and it was weird trying to explain to her why people of her height had beards, and she got a bit alarmed. It's like, you know, babies are quite embarrassing about things like that, and you know, there was a lot of that. I literally, because I'd also did Van Helsing, and there was a lot of doubles on that who were little people. I became someone who knew every little person in LA, was literally like low-fiving, like, hi, what's up? Like, anytime I was like in Barnes and Noble, I knew them all.
Wow.
Still do. They were a really nice bunch, actually. But yeah, it was a very, very strange movie.
Oh, I'm sure.
And Gary, who seems to have, up until that point, had done a lot of prosthetics and a lot of very uncomfortable costumes and things like that, and was like that guy, like, oh, you know, you must love prosthetics, you've done it. He's like, no, I fucking hate prosthetics, I hate them, I can't believe it. He used him every day, really grumpy. He had to have a hump, and he had like a funny bit stuck to his head, and his shoes on his knees, and it was just really funny. Like, you know, it's like, why did you say you were going to do this? Like, you hate this so much. But I loved him so much, and I bought him I went to a costume store and I bought him a really big fat lady stripper costume, you know, that's padded with the tassels and things, and I put it in his trailer and said, just for a change, you know, I can have this. And here's how much everyone needs to love Gary Oldman, as he drove home in it.
Oh. He is a really great guy. I love that guy. Okay. So next I want to ask you about The Aviator, where of course you played Ava Gardner for Martin Scorsese opposite Leonardo DiCaprio, which must have been a fascinating experience all around, just to prepare for it and to actually do it.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
I really loved Marty and I really loved Leo, and he wanted me to gain 40 pounds, and so I quite enjoyed the gaining of them. Then sort of carting them around in my actual life. Because I just got into kind of a sexy new relationship as well, and suddenly couldn't get my trousers on and things. So that was, I remember feeling a struggle. But, you know, artistic one, I beefed up. And
what'd you eat?
What didn't I eat? I think I went more for kind of chocolate and French fries. What would you, I mean, everybody does that, didn't you?
I would do donuts.
Donuts. Bear claw, I think I did.
Ooh,
I'd never even didn't know what that was before Aviator. But now I do. So it was that, and it was absolutely amazing. And it was a, just, he's so interesting. I think you have in your mind like, oh, what would it be like to work with Scorsese? His movies are so distinctive, and he's so totally on top of everything, and he must be micromanaging every single moment, and he absolutely isn't at all. And that was really surprising to me, how much he wants the actors to just sort of play. You know, I think he takes a lot of time over casting, and then likes to see all the bits come together, and gets such palpable joy from actors. It was heaven. Loved it.
It's also up there as far as your best on-screen costumes. I mean, the gown, I mean, and the jewelry and everything was just so fabulous.
Oh, thanks.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's always a little bit, you know, you're going to be unfavorably compared to Ava Gardner if you dress up as Ava Gardner. You will sign on for that. You know what I mean? It's like, that's going to happen. But I bumped into Robert Evans not long ago, and he said, you're far more attractive than Ava Gardner. And I thought, you absolute dog. I know you don't really think that. really nice of you to say.
It's a lovely thing to say.
Yeah.
When you and I met 8 years ago, it was because you had Nothing But the Truth coming out.
See, I might have to lie down on the floor now when you've said that.
Because that performance is spectacular.
Thanks,
And for those of you who didn't see it, which is all of you, because the movie studio went under just as the movie was coming
almost
out.
Everyone here is actors, right? Imagine this. So you do a movie, actually finally a movie that you can watch without vomiting and poking yourself in the eye, and you actually think you're really good in it. And the movie's really well directed, and Vera Farmiga's fucking brilliant in it, and everyone's great, and Alan Alda's brilliant, and it's a really great movie. And then you get told, oh, you've been nominated for a Critics' Choice Award for this movie, and you're like, amazing. The next day they go, actually, the film company's gone bankrupt, and the movie's not coming out ever. So this was a tricky one, and really, actually really broke my heart. Like, you know, it was a small movie, and it wasn't, you know, a great big budget movie, but it was one that we had really sort of felt a lot about, and it was very loosely based on Judy Miller, and Judy Miller had had such a terrible time in the press and was very gun-shy about anything like that, but did actually agree to meet me, and I met with her a lot, and it was just, there was so much kind of good stuff.
Do you guys remember that story where the journalist kind of outed a CIA operative, Valerie Plame? So, so Kate's character was based on the Judith Miller journalist role, and Vera Farmiga's role was based on the Valerie Plame, and it was. But
just it was so amazing.
Great.
Like, Vera Farmiga's so good in the movie, and they ended up doing as kind of part of her sort of research stuff. They had her take a lie detector test, and she took it as her character, and she passed as her character. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that movie shouldn't be the movie that goes down the toilet.
I know.
You know
It's a real bummer.
Yeah,
but is it available for people on
you can
DVD
see it,
or
you
online?
can see it on DVD, yeah.
Nothing But the Truth. Go
really,
see it.
It is really a lovely movie. It was a real shame. But that kind of slowed my roll for a second, because I was like, fuck me, like everything aligns up, and then like this act of God happens. Like, what's the point? Maybe I'll go and become like a yoga teacher.
So did you take
serial killer?
Did you take time off after that?
I think I did take a bit. Yeah, I just didn't really feel like. I just felt a bit like, you know, I'd lost my lady boner for a minute, you know, and I felt sad about it for a second, and I really still do. I think it was a real shame for the director who had written it and like
Rod
worked
Lurie.
so hard and was such a talented
We did
bloke.
The Contender. Did you guys see The Contender with Jeff Bridges and Joan Allen?
Yeah.
He did that, and Gary
Not
Oldman.
an untalented bloke.
Right.
You know, so anyway.
How about the Total Recall remake with Len Wiseman?
Yeah.
Right. And my understanding there is that you and he, or maybe you and he, were wanting to do other kind of sci-fi things, but it was hard to get them going. So him. So he kind of agreed to do Total Recall, though that wasn't the first choice.
So that he could do all the cool shit that he had planned. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so had you guys worked together a bunch since the first Underworld?
We did the second Underworld, and that was it. So no. And I was actually at the time doing the fourth Underworld, and he was getting ready to do Total Recall. And there was like a weird period of time because there were two female leads, and you know, he never said anything about anything. So I thought, okay, cool, like, you know, I'd be very grown up about this. There's no reason why I should be in your movie and, you know, whatever. It seems like kind of a weird thing to just not say.
So how did he then
So what happened was, this had
subject?
been going on for months, and actually I was on the set and he would send me, I don't know if I should even be allowed to say this, but he would send me other people's audition tapes and go, what do you think? Do you like this person? And I'd be like, oh no, I think she's good. So I was very familiar with that whole thing. And then apparently halfway through that situation, one of the studio people said, sorry, so why can't we have your wife? And I went, oh my God, you never said, I thought you didn't like her type thing. And they were like, no, why didn't you mention it? We thought she didn't want to be in the movie. I said, it wasn't like that. And suddenly I get this phone call saying, will you be in the movie? Which was super weird, because it had been like a thing going on in my house for about 6 months before that. And
So what did Len say was the reason why he didn't come out and ask you specifically to do it?
Because I don't think he knew whether the studio was into it. Like, it was just one of those, like, you know, it's a fairly collective decision, I think, right, on those type of movies. And it's a nice part. I did really like that part. So
are you responsible for Jessica Biel getting her part as the other female lead because you saw her audition and said, choose her?
I wish I'd never brought this up.
Okay.
but no, she did a very nice audition.
Yeah. And then we have to end by talking about Love and Friendship, because I just adore this movie. I'm so glad you guys all just saw it. And what I love about it is that this is the rare case of a movie with dialogue that is as smart as you are. I mean, and to see you deliver these one-liners, you know, I would never talk to someone I knew like that. And all of the genius little things that you get to toss off. Yeah. It's just such a pleasure. I'm curious to know, because I'm not familiar with the novella, the Jane Austen novella that it's based on, how much of what the audience just saw tonight is Whit Stillman, and how much is Jane Austen as far as those priceless lines?
It's mostly. However, so when I got the script, I read it and thought, there's no way this is Jane Austen. It's so funny and kind of naughty. He's obviously written it in the style of Jane Austen, but I didn't for a second think it was based on anything. And then it really was. And what's amazing is that I'd say 90% of my dialogue is Jane Austen, straight Jane Austen. Which is amazing, and he was wonderful because he was kind of, let's have your notes, and of course I got to do my university student thing and go back to the novella and go, oh no, but there's even more amazing, and she's even more horrific in this novella, and can we put, you know, and all that, which was great. And then we had a table read, and Whit dreads a table read, and rehearsal really of any kind, and so we were, Tom Bennett, who plays Sir James, who's tiny green balls, he couldn't make it to the read-through, and so we were all in Ireland, and he was being Skyped in on a Mac laptop, and that's always a bit shit for that person because you're at a remove and you're not really in the cool gang and whatever. It's quite hard. Anyway, he came in with that exact performance and smashed it, and we were all kind of peeing our pants because he was so funny, like immediately. You know, when you get like somebody's able to make like "nice to meet you" a super funny line, like that's a seriously, like that's a one to watch in my opinion. So what happened was that I think Whit also, who is obviously takes kind of 25 years to conceive an idea, come up with it, but then is also very much in the moment, so he's very unusual. Saw how great Tom was, and a lot of Tom's stuff is Whit. So his character really doesn't have that. It's an epistolary novel, it's all letters, and I don't think James Martin has written any in the Jane Austen one. So all of that, tiny green balls, 12 commandments, all that stuff, that's all Whit. And in fact, it was our producer who said something about the 12 commandments, and Whit was like, sorry, what? In the movie the next day.
In the movie, oh, that's great. What is it like to have 18 years go by and then find yourself on a movie set with the same director and same co-star?
I was so moved by that. I just thought, who gets to do that? That's so fantastic and special. And there wasn't as much disco dancing, which was a relief. And it was also fun for me, because I mean, we shot in Dublin, which I hadn't spent a lot of time in Dublin, but we were at least on my actual continent. So it felt like a really nice thing where you would, I mean, I really had a lot of anxiety in New York. I think I had kind of little panic attacks about leaving my hotel in the beginning. And then fell desperately in love with it, and with, you know, really good girlfriends there and stuff. Whit feels very much like he was the sort of Virgil of that for me. So then when he comes back and we're all old and grey, it's nice to be on our, you know, my continent as well.
Yeah.
People can understand what I'm actually saying.
This is a very simplistic question, but I'm curious how much in a movie like Love and Friendship do you feel like you're playing for a laugh? Or how much are you just letting the words do the job? I mean,
I found it so funny and so, I loved her so much, I loved her. And it just felt that there was a kind of musicality to the lines that you just had to let happen. So if that meant there was a laugh, there was a laugh, and if not, but I don't think, I think it was very important not to be arch. I think she had to feel absolutely justified in her, you know, missions and very secure in her charm, and then sort of play it like that. And she, you know, he doesn't sort of come in with much direction. Well, if you came in and said, I think her motivation here is that I think he would run briskly away, he doesn't like that sort of thing very much. But it just felt kind of, if I were good at singing, it was like singing, you know.
Okay. Let me end with a couple last questions from the audience. This is from Ty. Where's Ty? Hi.
Hi.
She wants to know, do you still continue with any type of acting training or study, even though you're so accomplished as an actress?
I do, and actually I discovered very late in life how amazing an actual coach can be. And more than anything, I think because it's so wonderful to break down a script you know, weeks and weeks before you shoot it, so that you aren't ever on set, which is very like this, going, oh, there's a plot hole here that doesn't make sense. You know, I'd like to have kind of really gone through all that first and asked the director, and I'm very respectful of directors, obviously I've generally lived with one or other, whether it's my stepfather or whatever, you know, for a long time, and so you can't really say, oh, funny, I was thinking it would be better if we should shoot this in Grand Central Station, you know, you can't do that to a director, but, and so I like all that, and also to have somebody that you can have really bad ideas with, and I tend to not rehearse it with an acting coach. I don't really say any of the lines, but there's that, you know, a director doesn't have time for the kind of obsessive talking and pulling it apart that I think, that I really like about filmmaking and acting. So that's been a real treat, and also to have it scheduled in. Like, you know, I used to find myself going, I'm going to work on the script now, and you know, don't really have a structure for that. You know, I was 19, whatever, I don't really have a structure. I'm going to write a few things down. You know, that's how I roll. And then something happened. But no, what you're doing with an acting coach, you've got kind of 3 or 4 hours blocked, and that's what you're doing. And I don't know, I just that kind of disciplining it, I really like.
I like this question from Adriana Bella. Hi, how are you? She wants to know which of all your characters was the most challenging to play. A hero in Much Ado About Nothing is one of the most difficult parts, I think, written for anyone ever, because she has so much happen to her and she says so little, and she's also not a complete drip. So it's quite tricky with this sort of mute character who's going through all this amazing trauma, you know, to convey what's happening for her through these, you know, not much. I remember Emma Thompson saying, "Oh, darling, it's a pig of a part," and I found that quite reassuring, actually. She's wonderful, and also I think Underworld has been very challenging for reasons that we all know now that we're all. There you go. And I want to end with this. This question cracks me up because 2 or 3 times in our chat you've said that you can't sing. Sherry says you're a great singer. Oh, because did you sing in the movie tonight? No. No. Why, Sherry, why do you think she's a great singer? Where's Sherry?
I'm Sherry.
Hi.
I am a singer, and I Googled you, and I heard you sing Amazing Grace.
Oh, yeah.
The words are beautiful.
Really?
And I disagree with you.
Sherry says she's a great singer for those who can't hear.
She's a great singer because you put your heart in it.
She heard
That's
Kate
so
singing
nice.
Amazing Grace on YouTube.
That's so nice of you. I had to, that was Last Days of Disco, actually, and it was the scene I was dreading. This is turning into a therapy session. I used to come home from school and go, Mummy, listen to this, I just learned it, and I'd sing Twinkle Twinkle. My mother would go, oh, yeah, like that. So I always have that in my mind. I'm probably not as horrible as I think I am. I'm not that great, but I did have to sing Amazing Grace lying down in a hospital bed at the end of Last Days of Disco, and fucking singing while you're lying down, what you don't think is all your saliva is basically drowning you. So I did nearly die a couple of times. I was so frightened. But my God, no one's ever said that to me. That was worth it for that. Thank you so much.
But her question is, would you consider doing a musical?
in my mind, I'm doing one right now. There's nothing that, I mean, I have to say I'm incredibly sensitive to music, and I do use music a lot in terms of to get myself in the right emotional place, and I'm somebody who can't sort of be doing many other things because if there's a song I like, I have to stand up and dance and sing to it, so that's probably a good idea. I don't drive. I'd be in trouble. But yeah, I really would love that, but I just have a feeling it would be upsetting for the audience.
I feel like Whit Stillman, Chloe Sevigny, and Kate Beckinsale need to make a musical together as movie number 3. That's just me.
Can it be Hamilton? Because I know all the words to that.
Yes. You're perfect for it. Kate, what a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh my God, you too.
And thank you all for being such a great audience.
Have
a great night, everybody.